loading here. Okay, we're live here. It's recording. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone on the live stream here. Uh, my name's Jonathan Winkler, founder of True Agile, Disrupting the Status Quo. With me right now today, we have Bob Galen, who is very nice to join us. And this is with our Learning with Agile Legend. So we're going to go with some questions for Bob. Bob, in my experience, has been awesome. I worked at a previous organization where he was a consultant, and he's fantastic. And I just wanted to have this live feed, this live stream, this podcast, so Bob could share kind of what he had shared and help me with all of you listening and viewing this as we are here live. So, with that said, let me start out with Bob and giving Bob just an introduction of yourself and your personal involvement with Agile throughout the years.
Sure, Jonathan. First, thank you for having me. Second, I don't know. I don't want to count myself as a legend. So maybe I'll call myself like half a legend or maybe a quarter of a legend or something.
A
But
quarter
I don't
legend.
think I'm a full legend. So that being said, hi, everyone. I'm Bob Galen. I'm an Agile coach. I'm in Cary, North Carolina. So in central part of the East Coast of the U.S. I've been practicing Agile stuff. I happened on Scrum very early on in Scrum, like the mid 90s. I happened on
Okay.
the white paper that Schwaber and Sutherland put together. I actually attended a conference where they presented that paper, OOPSLAW. I think it
Oh
was
wow.
96, 97, in that range. I was a developer at the time or a director of developers, but the OOPSLAW conference was very technical and they happened to be sharing early lessons learned from that. So really got excited about that. Not so much Scrum, but this notion of trusting the teams, team empowerment, iterations, sort of the essence points of agility. And I came back from the conference and I started practicing some of this stuff with my teams. I was in, the good news or the bad news is I was in a leadership role, so I could influence the teams to try some of these ideas out, and they went along for the ride. And that was the beginning. So it was XP practices, Scrum practices in the beginning. I consider myself an early adopter, more from a leadership perspective. And then along the way, I started doing some independent coaching and consulting. Still had a day job. So during the day, I was a leader in technology organizations, and at night, I was a consultant. And wrote a few books along the way. My first book was in 2001. It was something called Software Endgame, so it had nothing to do with Agile. It was a talk. It was like how to land software projects, and then got interested in some Agile stuff, product ownership. My most recent book is on coaching, and I have an independent sole practitioner LLC, and I've been doing that for over 10 years, and I
Wow.
seem to be making a living. Although I can't buy belts, everyone, I'm stuck buying suspenders. So I can't
That's
afford
cool.
belts, but I can afford suspenders. So that gives you an indication of the success of my consulting and coaching practice.
That's
So,
great.
but thanks for having me here, Jonathan.
Yeah, thank you for for joining and having a chance to share. And for those out there, if you have any comments or questions you'd like to ask Bob, there is an area you can drop that in. But we're going to move forward with kind of learning from Bob, a quarter legend, not full agile legend, but in my opinion, he's awesome. And I'm gonna give him some questions here, and we're gonna have a good conversation. So my first question after that awesome introduction, it sounds like Bob, you've been there, you've lived there, you've heard things about Agile and Scrum, you've seen it change, evolve over time. What's
Yep.
your current opinion on the state of Agile as it is today? I mean, we're talking 22 years since the Agile Manifesto came out, even before the Agile Manifesto, all the Scrum that was going on.
Yep.
What have you seen and experienced in your opinion today on the state of Agile?
Uh, I mean, in a word, I'm disappointed, I guess, with where we've ended up from a variety of perspectives. And I'm this may I may vent or rant a little
No,
bit,
please. Yeah,
but I think we've gotten to this point where things like certifications have become this ubiquitous sort of badge of entry,
sure.
and that bothers me a little bit. I get tired of people talking about metrics, believe it or not, and like
Absolutely.
measuring. I'm just tired of metrics, that discussion. Uh, and not that metrics are bad, but this insane focus on measuring individuals and teams and coaches, because I think the intangibles, the mindset, which is harder to measure, is what drives the success. Um, I Another thing that's really disappointing to me, and this is probably from the beginning. So some of these things have regressed over time.
Sure.
Metrics has emerged over time. I don't think we've done a good job of respecting leaders. So I think since the beginning, and it wasn't intentional. I don't think it was intentional in the manifesto, or it it wasn't intentional in Scrum in the early definitions. But I think we marginalize or vilify, or we talk about managers and leaders as them, right?
Sure.
And we
Interesting.
have these conversations. If only they would do this, then we would have unicorns and rainbows down here at the Agile
Sure.
side in the team, and that's not useful. And it's not just teams that do that. Coaches, industry pundits do that.
Absolutely.
I see leadership rants almost every day on LinkedIn. So something like that. Another thing is, I guess, like buzzwords. Like psychological safety is really important, right? I think this notion of psychological safety, Jonathan, we've talked about it in creating safety in teams, but we've almost overused it to the point where when you mention the two words psychological safety, people roll their eyes now.
Yeah.
And
Interesting.
I think we've almost like over sort of over overuse some terms or slogans, and we need to get back. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm disappointed with the trend of where we've gone. I think we've gotten away from a lot of the basics.
Sure.
I was around. I wish I could get the Wayback Machine. I think Bullwinkle and Rocky. If it, no, they had a Wayback Machine. Was that it?
Yeah. I
Who
think so.
in in that
Yeah.
cartoon? I wish everyone who's in Agile today could get into the Wayback Machine and look at what was going on. It wasn't perfect,
Sure.
but there was basics. For example, experimentation. Uh, Customers, stakeholders would get involved in the teams. There wasn't a lot of these layers and things like that. In the early days of XP, it was about the team. You honored the
Yeah.
team instead of honoring leaders, project managers, RTEs, scrum masters, project. I mean,
Absolutely.
like we're focusing on the structural side of things, and we've lost sight of the teams and the craftsmanship of building great software, and
Yep.
delivering that to clients and things. So I think we've gotten away from a lot of that stuff. Some people use the term, I think Martin Fowler used the term, the Agile Industrial Complex.
Absolutely.
Dan Mizik has talked about that as well. And it's money, right? So there's money to be, in simple terms, there's money to be made.
Hmm.
And as Agile has raised in popularity, the certifications, the consultants, I'm one, right?
Me too.
We've gotten away from sort of. I'd like to think that I'm principled, but we've gotten away from those principles, a lot of us,
When
and
you
I'd like
say
us to get back. Go ahead.
when you say principles and getting back to basics, are you referring specifically to the Agile Manifesto as well, or also what you had mentioned earlier?
I
Um,
think what I mentioned, I'm not. I think the manifesto was wonderful. I'll say, for example, ethics. I
yeah.
think there wasn't. I don't know if there was a direct mention of ethics, professional ethics, in the manifesto. Uh,
Absolutely.
but in agile coaching, we've gotten away from, what is our ethics proposition? We're there to serve the client. So yes, making money is great, but we're there to serve value and serve our clients. And I
Yeah.
think we've lost sight of that. We I joke sometimes. Everyone if you look on LinkedIn, everyone's an agile coach nowadays.
Yeah.
Right. I attend I get a Scrum Master certification, and I'm sort of tongue in cheek and sort of not. And then suddenly I'm a Scrum Master, and then 2 days later I'm an Agile coach because it sounds great, and
Yeah.
it's hierarchically higher,
Yeah.
and I can make more money, I guess. And I'm not pointing at any individual, but that's not, yes, get paid, but it's also about professional integrity. It was about the craft of building software.
Yeah.
It's about the joy of building software. And there was a joy of doing great work. And I think now we get caught up in like, let's follow the Scrum guide.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Let's follow the Scrum. And that's great. But what about the essence of what are we trying to do? And
Yeah.
honoring leaders, honoring teams, etc.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of installers of frameworks, and
Oh,
there's not this idea of like human beings, people doing work. Let's talk about these things. It's much more. It's become a very strict, rigid process, I think, to a degree. But do you see um, you have the Agile Manifesto, you have what you've spoken on. Do you see some sort of document we can all kind of rally around? I feel like Agile, everybody has an opinion on Agile and they're all great, but do we have something like you're seeing now that um, we can rally around as either a manifesto or a guide, or maybe it's not any of that. Maybe it's much more
I don't think it's
intangible.
that. I think it goes back to that Wayback Machine that I was talking about.
Yeah.
I think I don't know how many. I talked to a lot of agile coaches, and I asked this question of, have you seen a high performance agile team in in their native environment in the wild? Have you seen one of those?
Sure.
And a lot of them have never seen it. Now they're coaching to
Sure.
build those, but I've actually seen early XP teams that were in one big room that had index cards that planned together as a team, where the customer was involved with the team,
Absolutely.
where demos were like these emergent properties, where experimentation was rife, where there was high energy. Pairing happened naturally. It was
Yeah.
all about getting stuff done, right?
Sure.
Value, delivering value. And there wasn't, a stand up. Oh, you have to have a, daily scrum. Those things emerged because they made sense.
Correct.
And things were very simple, Jonathan, right? There wasn't a lot of fanfare.
Yeah. Yeah.
Scale. Here's my rebuttal, everyone. Look at the scaled agile framework. Yes, I'm going to. So look at SAFe
Yeah.
and tell me that that's a simple model. And
Yeah.
the answer is no, it's not. Is that the simplest way we could sort of create teams to deliver value? Of course it's not. So
Yeah.
we've gotten away from that. So go back to what the simplicity of delivering great stuff.
Yeah.
I remember a video. Um, there was a video of a company, Nordstrom's, and this was a few years ago, and they were doing a sunglasses application in the store where customers were coming up, and they had post-it notes, and the team was building software and an application right there
Oh,
based on
wow.
feedback, iterating.
Immediately.
And it was like a 10 or 15-minute video. So look for Nordstrom's, I think, sunglass video. and
Nordstrom.
and I'm not putting it up on a pedestal, but that is a 15-minute window into agile done well.
Yeah.
And so that's what I want people to see. The other thing is, let's not follow. There's too much argument now about following the Scrum Guide. Everyone, so hold your ears if you believe in the Scrum Guide. I the Scrum Guide is wonderful, but it's the life is not about following the Scrum Guide. Life is about our agile mindset, about
Yeah.
delivering value, about working collaboratively, about doing great things, leaping tall buildings, delivering high quality. So, and we can do it through Scrum. So that's I think following a document is probably not the way to go. What I would
Yeah.
say, and it's context.
Sure.
So every company's context is going to be slightly different. So adjust to that. Don't follow the Scrum Guide. Follow the delivery principles. That's what I mean by principles, those basic agile principles, and then start there, and then
Yeah.
adjust frequently, and look for what good looks like. Now get that under your belt. Now bring it back to your current context, and that's your goal. Is
Yeah.
how do we get to that?
Yeah.
uh, i
Absolutely.
I talk about descaling a lot. So I'll get brought into organizations, and they're like, Bob, we need to scale, or we have safe, and I'll go in and I try to respect the frameworks. But a lot of what I'm trying to do initially is actually remove scaling
Sure.
that's been like infrastructure or descale. And it's that same thing of getting back to the basics. I think we've lost that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of getting back to the basics from a cultural perspective of maybe listening and hearing from folks like yourself that have lived in kind of the golden age of agile and knowing, there was a better way and it was so much better. And we didn't have these guides or anything like this, but the culture was very good during that time. And we need to have maybe like a renaissance or bring that back a bit. That makes a lot of sense. That's very interesting.
And
Definitely.
Andre said something in the comments, and he talked about you're probably talking about the spirit of XP at the time, not about rules and principles. I think you nailed it, Andre. I very often use this term. I don't write about it enough, but getting to the spirit of Scrum, getting
Yeah,
to the spirit of Agile. Now, one of the conundrums is you need to have experience in order to guide people to that. So it's really hard for 20,000 newbies to figure out what the spirit is. So you need someone like me or like you, Jonathan, to
sure.
sort of provide that guidance to get to the spirit of it. What are the boundaries? What are the guardrails for the spirit of XP or the spirit of Scrum? But that's the point, is what is the essence of it,
Yeah.
as opposed to just blindly following the rules.
That's fascinating. I think that really is a good word for it, the spirit of agile. I feel like, all this stuff you're like it's like a cog in a machine, like very Orwellian, like bureaucratic, like we must do this and we must do that, but there's no it's lost its spirit, its freedom to innovate, things like that. That's fascinating. And I did want to get to some of the questions here. We have a bunch of people chiming in. So the first one here from a LinkedIn user, I think they're anonymous, which is fine. I'd love to hear more about the intangible traits that can't be measured, but are enormously important to successful agile projects and teams. I know we touched on some of that. I didn't know, was there anything else you wanted to add to that from that comment?
I mean, I'll give you a quick story. And I was reminded of this. I was being interviewed or a webinar or something within the last month or so, and it reminded me of a story from 15 years ago or so. I was a leader. This is when I wasn't independent, or wasn't totally independent. So it was at least 15 years ago, probably. I was at a company, and we were doing Scrum, as I recall, and we would have this large area. There's about 15 Scrum teams in the company, and we had this large area where every 2 weeks we would do our sprint reviews. And each team or some combination of teams would do their demonstrations. They would talk about the reviews and things like that. And I remember one team, and we had all these sofas around, and the CEO, I just happened to be, I wasn't schmoozing with the CEO, but I just happened to be sitting beside our CEO, and I was the head of engineering, so the VP of engineering, and we were
Sure.
just sitting there, and a team jumped up on stage. We it was important for us to have stages, and every all of the
Interesting.
C-level team attended, the C-level leadership team, because it was important,
Yeah,
because this was value, that we were delivering value. And I remember one
absolutely.
team delivered a story, and they delivered the story, but then they talked about the story behind the story, the user story. And the story behind it was they refactored about 5,000 lines of code out of the system while they were implementing it. And then
Oh,
there were
wow.
some bugs that they discovered that were actually in this product. We had to actually pay customers back for the impact of some
Oh,
bugs.
wow.
So these bugs were actually literally costing us money. So the
Absolutely.
team took the initiative. So they delivered the story functionally. Then they refactored it and made it simpler.
Interesting.
And to me, this was gravy. This is like the cherry on top of the sundae. Everyone with me, everyone, right? And then they fixed some freaking bugs that were
Yeah.
like costing us money, and they were nonchalant about it. It's like, well, you know what? This was the responsible thing to do,
Yeah, the
right? And
integrity.
and
Yeah.
while we were in there, we just cleaned up our room. We cleaned
Yeah.
up a room, and I looked over to the CEO, and like a little and I'm not exaggerating. He got a little bit tearful, and I'm
Wow.
like, and he was like, that's agile. And I'm like, you're damn straight it's agile.
Yeah.
Because they didn't deliver. what we asked for. They did the right thing
Yeah.
for the customer, for the company, for themselves, from a technology point of view, for people who are going to maintain that later on. So
Yeah.
I don't know. To me,
Interesting.
that's illustrates like the mindset I'm looking for. That to me is that high performance. If you get that, let's call that metric the tier. Let's call that the tier metric. Tears
That's a
of
good one.
joy, right? The tear of joy. I'm not joking, everyone,
No,
but
this
that's
is
what we
yeah,
want. We want to get the attention of leaders and stakeholders and say, we're not in Kansas anymore.
yeah,
We're getting stuff done. We're doing great things,
sure.
right? So I don't know if that helps or not, but
No,
that to me
absolutely.
is like simple. Those are the outcomes that we should be looking for, not points or velocity or throughput. All of those things are nice, but are we wowing? Are we showing value
Yeah,
to the we did something fundamentally important for the company and for our customer?
yeah, yeah. At the
Did
end
that
of the day,
was that too schmaltzy, Jonathan? I don't know. That may
I think
that
that
may have been
was
over the top.
not at all. That was a beautiful story. That was very interesting, and I think it captures kind of what we're speaking on. And to the LinkedIn user, that you feel free to respond in the comments if that captured what you were thinking, Bob's response, or if you need some clarification or follow up as well. Andre, I know we spoke on this. We stopped using Scrum as defined somewhere in 2010. Now, when Scrum is more than 30 years old, do you think industry needs a new framework to replace Scrum? Interesting question.
I I think part of getting back to basics, one of the things that's happening is we're debating, right? There's something called Agile 2 now. So 13 or so people, 13 to 17, I forget the number, it's like the manifesto numbers, came together and they wrote a book called Agile 2. And now when I read some of the commentary from those folks, they're all slamming Agile, the Agile manifesto. So it's like,
Wow.
right, the Agile manifesto sucks. Agile 2 is the new kid on the block. So it's going to solve world hunger.
Sure.
The other thing that bugs me is they don't. I think we're all on the shoulders. We're standing on the shoulders of giants, not
Hmm.
me. There's some good people, and I think sometimes nowadays we're getting into pointing fingers, arguing Kanban, Scrum, stand up. Do you
Yeah.
stand or not? How often? Stop that. It's all
Dilbert-esque.
BS. It's
Yeah.
Let's get back to basics. The focus should be on doing great work and delivering great value and working and having fun, enjoy doing it. I think you can do that under Scrum. So I don't.
Yeah.
I think it's the mindset. I think we need to. I'm actually thinking of a metaphor like we need to cross the chasm, or maybe we've crossed the chasm, so maybe we need to jump back across the chasm and start over again.
Yeah.
We need a do over in some ways, and so no, I don't think so. I think we need to get back to basics, and that's what I mean.
Yeah.
I think Scrum, so the spirit of Scrum can be successful. The spirit of XP can be successful. I am going to not say the spirit of Save
Okay.
will be
Controversial.
controversial, but getting back to the essence or the simplest possible thing that can work, and
Yeah.
then build up from there.
Do you see that being as like, I mean, touching on that safe comment, I read or heard recently 60% of organizations are using safe and have embraced that. How do you get that shift away from more towards that mindset? This seems like safe came in, it was quiet at first, and now it's taking over kind of the agile industrial complex, and every organization wants it. What you're saying is important, and I think it's absolutely where we need to go. But how do you get organizations to quote buy into that, um, and not something like a process like safe?
I think that the organizations have to start listening to their teams again, right? So in
Yeah.
the early days of XP teams had power.
Yeah.
Customers listen to the team. That doesn't mean that we listen to the team. It wasn't inmates running the asylum, and it wasn't making poor business decisions. We respected the the intellectual capacity of the teams, and we were
Sure.
counting on that in delivering value. I think we've gotten away from that. SAFE is not a team structure. SAFE
Correct.
is not being sold to teams.
Correct.
SAFE is being sold to executives to implement organizationally to make the organizational transformation agile.
Correct.
That's fine. Leaders, how do we change that? Leaders start talking to your teams. Start
Yeah.
talking. What metrics would be useful from a team perspective? What processes and flows does the team think would be more effective? I'm not saying throw out all of SAFE. What I am saying is trust your teams and listen to your teams.
Yeah.
When I was with XP teams, I think in terms of teams had great power. Uh, I once I once attended a conference probably 10 years ago. Uh, and this is what was his name? The refactoring, Michael Feathers, not refactoring, but Michael Feathers was I think craftsmanship. He his written book on maybe it was refactoring, uh, but Michael Feathers was doing the keynote, and there was about 1,200 people in the audience. I'll never forget this. And he put up some code on to display
Sure.
code. He said, "How many people in the audience are comfortable with this? Are comfortable reading this?" And it was like maybe 50 hands went up. And then he asked the question. So 1,200 people, 50 people could actually read the code. Okay,
Sure.
how many people could actually modify this? Like 40 hands went down. So like
Oh my.
maybe 10, 15, 20 hands. So this is it. So Jonathan, this is an agile conference. And what it says is who was in the audience? We're talking about agile ways of working. And
Yeah.
there was like 20 to 30, maybe 50 developers. And then everyone else was like project
Yep.
managers, directors, VPs,
Interesting.
right? Metrics mavens, architects, people who were telling the teams what to do.
Yeah.
In that, I'll never forget. I'm like, we're not in Kansas anymore. We have pivoted away, and we're
Totally.
serving the wrong constituency.
Totally.
I'm not anti-manager. I'm pro team and pro sort of creator, right? I would include
Interesting.
UX creators in that. So
Yeah.
somewhere the agile industrial complex has caused this pivot. Scaling safe is a part of that. So how do we change that around? We pivot back. We know we have data around what worked in the beginning.
Sure.
We just don't like that to some degree.
Yeah, yeah, it's not something to be bought or sold as much. And it sounds like these leaders, instead of going external and looking for this process or something to put in place, look internal and listen to the team and essentially try to list. They have ideas. Gosh
Exactly.
forbid you listen to what a software developer said instead of going and
Who
getting.
is actually at the lowest level and doing, guess what? Everyone read my lips. Who is doing work,
Exactly. Yeah,
right? Not talking about doing work, not orchestrating the work, not measuring the work, but
totally.
actually doing
Actually
work.
doing the work. It often
Yeah,
reminds me of the traditional pyramid hierarchy with the person at the top, and then, as you go down, flip that upside down, and you have this supporting structure of the people actually doing the work. Very good.
I
Very
actually had
interesting.
that somewhat in the early days of SAFE. This is around the SAFE 1.0 to 2.0. Someone
Okay.
showed me this SAFE picture. This was an early version of the SAFE picture,
Sure.
maybe 3 tiers, and and I had exactly that comment. I said I'm very uncomfortable that the teams are at the bottom
Hmm.
and leaders are at the top.
Totally.
I said it may sound odd, but I would feel so much better if you flipped it around so the teams were at the top, uh,
Absolutely.
and you could keep all of the terminology, but the messaging is we're not working for the leaders, we're working to support the team,
Yeah.
and the teams support the clients, and the teams deliver value.
Yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely. Interesting. I often think too of the Andon Court at Toyota, that going back even years ago, where the worker could stop the what's going on,
exactly.
and people would listen to the worker, or it's in Agile, the software developer. Interesting. So sorry, going back to some of the comments, questions. Ethics need to
Sure.
be addressed in Agile. There are some bad coaches out there. Fair.
Some,
So
uh,
that was from
some.
Julia.
No, I agree. I don't know I'm not measuring good versus bad, but
Sure.
I mean, I think Pareto applies to that. I think the 80-20 rule. I actually, they're not bad people, but
Mhm.
they're underskilled coaches.
True.
Depending on what model or what framework, I like the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel as a metaphor for what good, well-rounded coaching looks like. And if you look at that and say, I am well-rounded in these competency areas, then I see very few coaches that are well-rounded today. So I would
Yeah.
agree, and we need to step up our coaching game. That's one of the problems that we have, and I think that's something we need to change. I'm hopeful that we change that going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And a self-awareness, I feel like, to be able to go, I'm not the best. There's a lot to learn and grow as a coach. Interesting. Another comment, it is funny, Safe 6.0 rebranded because the terminology was similar to PMI program certification. Another comment from Julia Manning. Um, let's see what else we have. Andre, there was almost no true XP teams, like not real Scrum teams this time, because if you do not follow all 12 XP rules practices, you're not an XP team by definition. Do not think all XP teams use pair programming. You're probably talking about the spirit at XP time, not about rules and principles. And then he goes on to say, thank you, fully agree. I think you had addressed that within a couple minutes. Um, Artie Gold said, dang it, it's about the music, not about the score, but the
Oh,
score and
I
the heart.
saw that. I saw that comment. I thought that was a beautiful comment.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Hey,
Um,
Jonathan, can we go
go.
back? Julia said
Oh, I'm
something.
sorry. Yeah,
No, no,
sure. Did I
you're
skip?
fine. I saw something she said. I attended an event with Jeff Sutherland, and he stated that all the layoffs in Agile because companies are descaling and starting to go
Oh,
back
here.
to the
Yep.
basics. I don't know if so I sort of disagree. My view of why the layoffs are happening is, and this may be controversial. I don't know if Agilists are today, especially historically, I think we've done a better job of connecting the dots. I don't think companies understand the value proposition that agile roles bring. I don't
Mhm.
think the agilists, coaches, scrum masters, product owners are doing a good enough job of self awareness and connecting the dots with the stakeholders to say, beyond, oh, I like agile and I like you. Well, when push comes to shove, if you have to sort of reorganize, I think folks look at, so there's two types of people in organizations. I'm going to call it overhead. There's overhead roles and there's value delivery roles. Overhead, so value delivery roles are developers. Let's
Yes,
just say that.
absolutely.
Uh, Overhead roles are people like project managers, managers, in some organizations, testers, manual testers. And in many organizations nowadays, it's scrum masters, it's agile roles. They're not bad people. They're like, when push comes to shove, though, it's like, I love these agile folks, but what are they really doing? And I know what a developer does, but am I getting that same value? And I don't think we've connected the dots enough. Coaches, I know this is true for many coaches. Coaches are too quiet. They don't like tooting their own horn. They don't like talking about the value that they're bringing. And I think that's what's happening. We have to cross
Interesting.
this chasm as agilists and start connecting to the dots to make sure that stakeholders see what we're bringing. That would include RTEs, etc. And that's not, the data doesn't speak for itself, and don't assume that your manager is representing you. Every one of us needs to be having these value based, and it starts with asking someone, what can I do, what challenges do you have, and what
Yeah.
can I do to solve those challenges? We need to start connecting to those leaders and then start delivering, maybe putting some of our own skin in the game.
Yeah.
But I think it was easy to be an agilist in the first 20 years, is another way to say it. I don't think it's so. I think we felt like, oh, agile is this really sexy thing. We're just along for the ride. Yes, it's
Totally.
great. I don't think we're going to get away with that. I think we're going to have to be value delivery. Sort of, we're going to have to align with our value and delivery and
Do you
make sure
think?
we're communicating that.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think there's a correlation from, you know, the economy's been roaring for a while. We have, easy money. We had low interest rates. Now we're seeing inflation, and that's maybe going to impact some of these organizations in that, it's not they're going to have to really um, look at some of this stuff and start to possibly even reduce some of this. Do you see any of that as well going forward? You had mentioned the
But I
previous
want it. But
point.
what I'm saying is, I want it to be equalized, and it's not. What?
Yeah,
So I've been a leader in organizations that had to downsize.
sure.
Uh, so I want to look as agilists. We want to move from the overhead to the value delivery side.
Correct, correct.
Not on paper, but in the mind of every leader making those decisions. Like when you told me, oh, Bob, you have to reduce development staff by 25%. I'm like, well, then our product line is going to suffer by
Right.
25%. Bob, you need to remove the scrum masters. I wouldn't have that direct correlation. So
Okay.
now we got away with that because folks were buying agile and they
Mhm.
were buying the growth. Now the economy, but even when the economy starts improving, I still think we have to do a better job of in every leader's mind understanding what the value proposition of the scrum master. Here's a metric. The over my cold dead hands will I lay off a scrum master in lieu of a developer. They're equivalent. There's an equivalency in value.
Yeah, yeah.
We
I
may
see.
not be there today, but we need to get there tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that goes back to what you were saying earlier about the integrity of an agile coach or an agile consultant and doing the right thing in that realm. Let's see what else we have. Days ago when a junior some uh, comments here. I don't see any questions, but just some further comments, which is great. Um, we can see about moving on. This is great conversation, by the way. I have so many. I've been taking notes and things, and maybe follow up or something. But I'm like scribbling away here. Um, but getting to our next question, I think we've kind of covered a lot of this. But if there's anything else, what would you like to see in the agile world changing going forward? I know you just spoke on this was the past 20 years. Now, things have changed. This is going to be kind of, we need to address the value. What else do you see going forward? Would you like to see in the agile community
I I
as
think
well?
we've covered it, but I'll just try to create like a just think about a list. So to me, um, help leaders meet leaders where they are. So instead of
Yeah.
having them and us, we are
Yep.
still 20 years and it is still them and us.
Yeah.
That's
That's great.
that is not that is and this is part of the value proposition. How
Yeah.
is someone going to see our value proposition if it's them and us? So we need
Totally.
to start. So item one, everyone starts partnering with leaders. It does no good to vilify them, to marginalize them, to stereotype them. No good at
Yeah.
all, right? Partner with them. So we have to do that. We have to figure out how to do that, and then help them meet them where they are, and then help them transform. Second thing to me, and we talked about this, back to basics for goodness sakes. So if you want a metaphor, Wayback Machine, take that away. The Wayback
The
Machine.
Wayback Machine.
Stop the debates. A third point. It's too exhausting to we're debating like methods and tactics and tools and frameworks, and we're not getting back to the essence and the spirit. We're sort of
Yeah.
ignoring, we're thinking that what tool we use is going to get success. It's not. It's mindset, it's principles, it's collaboration, it's those spirit points that create kick-ass teams and kick-ass products.
Yeah.
So how do we stop the debates, just stop the energy, and start actually walking our talk? Here's a
Exactly.
metric I want, and I'm just the one metric that matters is happy teams plus happy customers, right? So I just and just keep some metrics simple.
Yeah.
Um, I'd say it's all about, and I said this, I'm going to emphasize it again. It's all about the team, stupid, right? It's
Yeah.
it's right. Remember flipping? We talked about flipping darn safe, flipping
Sure.
it upside down. It's putting the people first.
Yeah.
You've hired great people. Get out of their way.
Yeah.
Simple scaling. So most of the scaling, I don't. you want to do safe, that's fine, but simplify it. Start instead of implementing safe 6.0, 7.0, 8.0, 9.0, 10.0, right? It's going to be huge,
Yeah.
huge. Uh, start to simplify it. So descale. Certifications, if I had a magic wand, I'd be like, let's reduce them by 90%. So I don't care which ones, right? You can reduce all the ones I have. That's fine.
Yeah.
Start, and actually, I would encourage people to start like letting your certifications go. I
Yeah.
I let my safe certifications lapse. Uh, but again, it's they have value.
Yeah.
So let's start impacting the industrial complex.
Yeah.
Make it about the results and actually doing great work, not about how many letters are after my name.
Yeah. That
And then
seems to be a
coaches.
big trend.
Agile coaching needs to really become a profession, not professional coaching. Sometimes people call it life coaching or,
Sure.
ICF coaching. That's not agile coaching. Agile coaching is much broader and deeper than that. So we need to build that.
Yeah.
And then final
Excellent.
thing maybe is the buzzword bingo. Let's stop the buzzword bingo of debating this or talking about Scrum or is it, what parts of the Scrum guide? Let's talk about value delivery,
Yeah.
customer driven value delivery. Let's focus on connecting the dots. The famous layoff is what Capital. One of the famous layoff firms
Yeah.
is Capital One in Richmond. They laid off 1,200 plus or minus folks because of Agile in their name.
Sure.
Let's do something so they have a harder decision criteria. It's not Agile. It's not doing a search on Agile in the job description. It's it's deciding we have to cut, but it's equivalent value,
Yeah.
right? It's and we're agile is as valuable as coding,
Yeah.
right? Because it's delivering products to the customer. So this
Very
really
good.
focus on that would be some of my those are not that's hope. I really think we're at a pivot point or a crisis point or sort of at a chasm. And I think in the next few years, we really either have to start taking some of these adjustments seriously, or we're going to just accelerate. And I don't know what that future is going. I don't want to be a part necessarily of that future.
Sure.
Let's continue because if I project that, we'll have 8,000 certifications, for example, and SAFE will be so big it'll gobble up the earth.
Yeah.
Like
Big
everything in the
brother.
earth will be doing. So what do we do to really it's not too late to make some of those adjustments. So I hope we start doing that.
Yeah. And I know we're coming up time. Just one last question. What advice do you give to folks maybe interested in Agile? You talked about I want a reduction of certs, but how does someone that's listening or out there, want to get into Agile? What are some things that they should be focusing on, or maybe taking on a mentor? I don't know, but just some thoughts on that quickly.
I think the key things and maybe it plays into the certs. It's fine to go to classes. I've always felt like experience trumps certifications.
Absolutely. Yep.
Chops trumps training. So
Yes.
how do we real chops, real world chops, real
Mhm.
world experience, not just saying it, but having been in the trenches, development chops, scrum master chops, product owner chops,
Totally.
chops. So how do you so if you're just entering, I'd say your number one priority is to gain chops. So how do you do
Yeah.
that? You you stay humble, you find a mentor, you find a coach, you ask for help, you have
Yeah.
the humility to know to don't fake it, right? So say I
Right.
don't know and ask for help and expect to be helped. Be ready to be helped. Be vulnerable
Yeah.
in that. Say I don't know, ask for help. Be a continuous learner. Like like a 2-day certification is a drop of water in the bucket.
Sure.
That doesn't mean that you're ready to be a scrum master. I mean, in
Yeah.
some organizations, that's what they do. They actually throw you into a team after a 2-day class. I
Yeah.
think they're making a huge mistake. That's fine. But then start going for help. Pair. We talk
Yeah.
about pair program,
Pair program. Yeah.
pairing, pair
Pairing.
coaching, pair scrum mastering,
Interesting.
pair product owner, pairing, triads, whatever you can. So really stay humble and realize that it's a journey.
Yeah.
It really bugs me when people ask me, how long does it take to be a coach? I'm a scrum master. Tell me, right, can I be a coach in a year? I'm
Sure.
like, I don't think it's that. I think that's the wrong mindset.
Yeah.
I've been agile coaching for 20 years. I'm still learning. I'm a work in
Yeah.
progress. I
Totally.
and I'm not joking, everyone. I challenge myself. There's areas of coaching. That's why I love it. I'm never going to be done. So that's the mindset, that continuous learning. Maybe the other thing is stay curious. Be
Yeah.
insatiably curious about agile. You'll never exhaust it. You will never become, what were we calling legends? I mean, I was really pushing on legends a little bit. I mean, any of the legends are still learning.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's a good point.
Linda Rising, everyone, I want you to look up Linda Rising. Linda is in her 80s. She's written some books. She is a role model for me. She is insatiably curious. Linda has more experience in her pinky than I have in my entire body. And she is still this wonderful role model. So
Interesting.
there are people out there to learn from, not just learn from what they're saying or writing, but learn from their role model,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And sort of mirror them. That's what I would recommend.
Yeah. And Linda, is it rising just like
Rising,
RISING?
yes.
Very good. Okay, I know we have about 10 minutes here, but I didn't know. It looks like we have a few more questions. Can you see those questions at the bottom? Is there any you'd like to take, or are we bumping up on time? We can also
So let
wrap
me
up.
see.
Sure.
So Artie says, how do we get the best output from the least amount of total effort? And how does it mesh with a managerial framework within an organization? People laud agility until an organization is under stress. Artie, what I don't have an answer. What I say is our our character and our ethics and our principles come through under pressure. So are we going to succumb and run around, or are we going to challenge the organization and prioritize? For example, I see so many organizations, everyone's double booked and triple booked and quadruple booked, and no one has a life and no one has time to think, and there's no self care. And everyone says, well, that's because I have no choice. The business is doing that to me. And I'm like, no, you have a choice. You are choosing to be
True.
quadruple booked and to do diddly squat about it. So, yes, I get the stress thing, but I would challenge everyone to step up and apply courage and take some personal accountability and ownership, and have some crucial conversations with folks, and handle that stress intelligently. So bring your principles to bear, even under your agile principles to bear, and your mindset even
Yeah.
then. Jordy said something. What do you feel about SAFe that's complicated, or what you don't like about this framework? Almost everything, Jordy. What I'll do is I've written a couple blog posts about SAFe that actually there's some parts of it that I think are valuable. Actually, from all of the scaling frameworks, I think there's essence points. So, for example, I'm a fan of PI planning. If anyone's familiar with, now, maybe not the way it's defined in SAFe to be 28 days and 18,000 hours, but a compressed form, and a simple form of collaborative planning for teams to get on the same page, I think is worth its weight in gold. The XP teams did something called release planning. Martin Fowler and someone wrote a book called, I forget the co-author. It was an XP book published around 2004 that was talking about release level planning in XP. And it was the same thing. I mean, believe it or not, Dean is borrowing, Leffingwell is borrowing things from everywhere else and then sort of packaging it under SAFe. So I think PI planning is one of those valuable things. What I'll do is I'll share those links to with
Very
Jonathan,
good.
and he can share them with the recording.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Do
And
you?
I
Okay.
think that's, well, we maybe have time
You,
for one.
yeah.
So I know some agile coaches that, this is Julia. So last question, that have never done the jobs below. It got
Got this.
safe, cert, and destroyed. I agree, Julia. There's a lot of bad coaches. Now I'm a little torn. I do think I so there's a debate right now on LinkedIn that says in order to be a coach, you have to have technical chops, and technical chops trump everything else. So either development technical chops, product technical chops, business domain technical chops. And in order to be an effective agile coach, you have to be strong in those domains. I agree with that, but I don't think that's all. I could still be a terrible coach if I'm astute technically. So I talk about being well-rounded. For example, having facilitation skills, having listening skills. Jonathan says something earlier that was really important. He talked about being self-aware, and so it's being, sort of that self-management side, that inside self-awareness. I think that's important for a coach as well. So there's some hard skills and soft skills. When I say well-rounded, it's that there are very few, and I'm not talking about years of experience, but what I'm talking about is well-rounded in your competencies.
Sure.
There's not a lot of agile coaches that are well-rounded today, and that's doing a lot of sort of damage, I think. That's part of what I'm wishing for when I say I think the coaches need to become more professional. We need to become more well-rounded.
Sure. Very good. Very good. I know we're probably at time here, Bob, and we might have went over. Any final thoughts, or we can wrap it up here as well.
So, just a final thought for me. So, Jonathan, thank you. And
Yeah,
then
thank you.
everyone, if you want to follow me, I don't know. The best way to reach out to me is I have a I have a persona called the Agile Moose. So it's agile-moose.com. I have a blog there. I do a podcast that I you can called the Metacast, and you can find the link there. I have a lean coffee called the Moose Herd that I'm a part of, where it's a place for agilists to gather in the woods, haha, and 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 rattle their horns together or whatever. So I am the Agile Moose. Agile-Moose is a great place to sort of connect with me, and I invite you to the Moose.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll share all those links as well in this conversation, or if you wanted to, about Agile Moose and the Moose Herd. I like that one. That one sounds fun too. But thank you very much, Bob. This has been a humbling experience for myself. You've been a very huge impact on my career as an agile coach and consultant, and have I feel have mentored me. I'm glad that you were able to share with the rest of the agile community as well. And it's been a humbling experience. And thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. And then everyone whose comments. So I see Jordy and Artie and I'm missing and Julia and everyone else I missed. Thank you for the interaction. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much. And we look forward. Maybe we can have you back on in the future sometimes. This is awesome. I love this stuff. So
So when you edit this, Jonathan, if I didn't suck, I would I
I'll
would
no, this was I
you
don't.
could delay that decision till later, and I would come back again sometime
Okay, very
if
good.
you want. All right. Hey
Awesome.
everyone, take good
Thank you.
care.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. Take care. Thank you very
Bye
much,
everyone.
everyone. Take care. Bye bye.